the girl left the school and disappeared without a trace. From the first hours of the investigation, the police learned several disturbing details. But then things got even more complicated. It took them a few months to figure it out. However, no one could foresee such a shocking final. Victoria Stafford was born on 15 July 2000 in Woodstock, Canada. The girl's parents divorced shortly after her birth, and she and her older brother Darren stayed with her mother. The father continued to participate in their lives, and they met periodically. The children liked to spend time with their maternal grandmother, but they were closest to each other. From their childhood, Tori and Darren were inseparable, with virtually no quarrels or other problems between them. Even though he was 3 years older, Darren always tried to look after her. In April 2009, when Tori was 8 years old, they moved into a new home. His advantage was that he was only a few minutes away from the school where he and his brother had been studying. Darren was supposed to wait for his sister after school and go home with her. On April 8, their first day of school after moving, Darren left school before his sister and decided to stop by his friend, who lived just across the street. After that, he planned to come back, pick up Tori, and go home. The boy returned to school about 10 minutes later, but his sister was nowhere to be found. He waited for a while and thought she might have gone home alone, as the road took only a few minutes. Darren went home, hoping to catch her on the way. However, the girls were not there, and she never came home. He told his mother, and the woman decided to call all the parents of Tori's friend. The mother admitted that her daughter might have visited someone and gone for a walk without telling her or her brother. Meanwhile, Darren got on his bike and drove around the neighborhood looking for his sister. Soon their grandmother joined the search, but they never managed to find Tori. All of her friends also did not see the girl after school. 2 hours after she disappeared, her grandmother stopped by the police station and filed a missing persons report. The investigators immediately began their search, interviewing all of Tori's acquaintances and relatives. They went to her house to talk to her mother, and almost immediately her behavior aroused suspicion in them. First, the woman was hardly involved in the search for her daughter. While Darren and his grandmother were driving around the neighborhood, she was sitting at home. The woman called her friends, but after that, she didn't take any other steps. She didn't even go to the police, so Tori's grandmother had to do it. Secondly, the investigators found something interesting. It turned out that the woman occasionally took illegal substances, for which she had already been in the attention of the police several times. Her mother had an addiction that sometimes made her do questionable things. She repeatedly sold items from her home to buy herself a dose, including toys and other items from Tori and Darren. In the meantime, other officers obtained security footage from the school's management and were able to see a girl on one of them. These images showed Tori leaving the school with some woman. The very poor quality of the tape made it impossible for the police to see her face. But something was clear. According to the footage, the girl walked with this woman voluntarily and did not resist at all. There were other people nearby. If a woman had taken Tori against her will, they could have intervened or at least called the police. However, based on these images, none of them thought it was strange or dangerous. Comparing their suspicions about the mother with this recording, the police formed a possible version of the incident. They did not rule out that the mother had actually kidnapped her daughter and handed her over to someone to pay off debts for illegal substances. The experts concluded that the height, size, and hairstyle of the woman in the video are similar to those of the mother. Despite this, they continued to look for the girl and pursued other leads. Nothing came of this, and meanwhile, news of Tori's disappearance spread throughout the city. Alarmingly, she was taken outside the school, and other parents began to worry seriously about their children. For this reason, a decision was made to cancel all classes until the investigators had figured out what had happened. Officers searched almost all night, but the girl was never found. The following days, the situation remained unchanged, and the police had no clue as to its possible location. The case quickly became known throughout the city, and immediately became the main topic for its inhabitants. Such abductions had not taken place for many years, and people were seriously worried about their children. The police did not rule out the possibility that the woman on the security camera footage might not be the girl's mother, but someone else. On the basis of the video, experts created a sample portrait of her, which was distributed to newspapers and TV channels. Tori's mother repeatedly spoke to reporters asking possible kidnappers to release her daughter. She also approached Tori herself and asked her to return home. The statement of the woman aroused even more suspicion about her, but from the public. People have noted that she exhibits virtually no emotion despite the disappearance of her child. In every interview, her mother spoke calmly, as if she were talking about something ordinary, and she never shed a single tear. Because of this, many residents of the city actually began to think that she might be involved. All these rumors quickly reached her mother, and in subsequent interviews she had to explain herself to people. During one of these speeches, which the mother attended with the father of the girl, she said that she was worried about her daughter, and she added that the women who actually kill their children, on the contrary, exhibit fake emotions. They're crying and throwing tantrums in front of the cameras to deflect suspicion. These words puzzled Tori's father, and they began to swear in front of the cameras. The man resented the fact that she was being excused for her lack of emotion and almost directly accused her of being indeed involved in the disappearance. The images overflew all news channels, further strengthening public confidence in the mother's involvement. However, a few days after Tori disappeared, an interesting tip came in. From the first days, they asked the public for help in describing the woman on the security cameras, and they received many calls, but one particular one seemed to them the most valuable. The caller stated that there was no doubt that he recognized an 18-year-old girl named Terry Lynn McClintock from the footage. Following a background check, the police discovered that she had a substance abuse problem from an early age. But more interestingly, McClintock knew Tori's mother because they were talking to the same dealer. The police discovered that the girl was actively involved in the search for Toria, distributing leaflets with information about the missing. However, it did not prove her guilt. But on April 12, 4 days after the girl's disappearance, McClintock was arrested on another warrant unrelated to the case. She breached her parole under the Banned Substances Clause and went to jail. The police took advantage of this and interrogated her. However, the girl denied any involvement. They continued to monitor her while she was in custody, and a few days later they noticed an interesting fact. She had been visited repeatedly by only one person, 28-year-old Walt Michael Rafferty. They decided to talk to him, hoping to get some new information. The girl herself told the police that she and Michael were dating. However, the man stated that they were only friends. When he was shown the security footage, he admitted that McClintock had a similar long white jacket. However, he was not at all sure that she was the one on the tape. As a result, the police again left with nothing. The girl remained in the cell on other charges while detectives continued to search for Tori and some other leads. The missing girl's grandmother offered a $10,000 reward for any information, and the concerned residents of the city continued to hand out leaflets and tried their best to help find her. Despite this, there has been absolutely no movement in the case for several weeks. But almost a month and a half after the girl disappeared, something unexpected happened. McClintock contacted the detectives through prison officials and said she wanted to tell them something about Tori's disappearance. The investigators immediately came to her for questioning. Her story really shocked them. According to the girl, on the morning of April 8, an unusual conversation began between her and Michael. At first, it was supposedly a joke about kidnapping some girl, and Michael started telling her she didn't have the courage to do it. McClintock didn't like it, and she started to prove to him that she was capable of doing something like this. Michael asked him to prove it. He said that if she wasn't really afraid to do something like that, she should do it today. The girl agreed. In the afternoon, she came to the school where she was studying history and began to wait. She said she had no intention of abducting her, but she was just looking for the right victim. The girl chose her because she got out of school first, and no one was near her. Going up to the girl, she started talking to her and said that she had a shitty dog in her car. It is noteworthy that Tori also had this dog at home. It is unclear whether this was a terrible coincidence or whether McClintock knew it because of her acquaintance with her mother, but the outcome was one. The girl was interested and wanted to see. They then went to the car with McClintock. However, there was no dog. Michael was in the car instead. As the girl approached the open door, McClintock pushed her there, got into the car, and the three of them drove off. They went out of town, made 2 stops at a gas station and a hardware store. McClintock went to the store. She said, Michael told her to buy a nail gun and garbage bags. The girl insisted that she knew nothing about her boyfriend's plans but began to guess what he was going to do to her. While at the store, she was thinking about not getting back in the car. However, she allegedly feared leaving the girl alone with Michael and returned. They then drove into a wooded area near Mount Forest, about 130 kilometers from the girl's home. Next, according to McClintock, Michael pulled the girl out of the car, started beating her, and abused her. The girl stated that she could not influence this, so she decided to go for a walk. After a while, a man killed Tori, hit her body, and they went home. Throughout the story, McClintock repeated that she had not known Michael's plans to kill her, and said that she would never have taken such a step if she had known about it beforehand. Of course, the detectives did not believe her. In their opinion, the girl arranged her story so as to minimize the blame and avoid responsibility, which in any case would be impossible. However, her version of events was enough to bring Michael in for questioning. At first, the detectives kept quiet about McClintock's story and simply asked him if he had anything to do with Tori's murder. They kept pushing him, and the man's behavior changed before his eyes. At first, he answered the questions calmly, but every minute Michael got more nervous. His voice sounded like he was ready to cry, but the man continued to deny involvement. Then the detectives told him about McClintock's confession, and Michael got even more nervous. He still wouldn't admit guilt, but he sounded like he was close to panic. The man said he didn't want to go to prison for the rest of his life because it would ruin his life, and repeated that McClintock had made it up. The detectives then decided to pressure him further and brought the girl to the same room for questioning. They asked the man to tell her face that she had lied, and Michael's behavior changed again. At first, he just kept quiet and looked at the floor, but then he practically whispered and called her a liar. Although the police still had no physical evidence, they decided to arrest Michael, and on 20 May, he was charged with first-degree murder. McClintock was also charged with aiding and abetting murder, but was charged with more serious murder charges 8 days later. The detectives believed that they had a good chance of getting a conviction in court. However, they still did not find the victim's body. McClintock agreed to help with this and drew a rough map of the area where they left Tori. The search continued for several months, and on 19 July, the investigators did find her body. Medical experts were unable to confirm conclusively that the victim had been subjected to violence. However, they found that the cause of death was multiple blows with a heavy object. Just before the detectives' trial, another unexpected turn was waiting to take place. McClintock suddenly changed the original version of events, and far from in her favor. She stated that she had indeed gone for a walk while Michael was abusing the victim. But then she returned and struck the victim herself, from which she had died. Thus, the girl admitted that she was not only an accomplice to the crime, but also a direct murderer. The Michael and McClintock trials were separated. She fully pleaded guilty, but the man still insisted on his innocence. During the trial, his lawyers shared their version of the story. The kidnapping and murder were originally planned and executed by the girl, and Michael had nothing to do with him. He drove with her in the car and didn't have anything to do with it. In other words, he watched McClintock kidnap and kill the victim, but he did nothing about it. At the same time, the prosecution provided footage from an Atom cell near the construction materials store where they had stopped en route to the murder site. Michael got on that tape when he was making cash withdrawals there. Apparently, his girlfriend was still in the car with Tori. Given that McClintock confessed that she was the one who killed her, she was quickly sentenced. She received a life sentence with a 25-year parole period. Michael's trial lasted several months and he was found guilty in May 2012. The man received a life sentence with the same right to early release. His girlfriend, who had already received her sentence, agreed to testify, telling the court all the details of what had happened. But that's not the end of the story. In 2018, after 6 years in prison, McClintock was transferred from prison to a secure health center. The news caused a storm of resentment throughout Canada, as the facility is more of a medical boarding house than a detention facility for violent murderers. Prisoners who have committed minor nonviolent crimes are transferred there. They can move freely throughout the territory and do whatever they want, according to the rules of the institution. Such people are not even called prisoners, but residents. Their everyday life consists of horse riding, drawing, apprenticeship, and other activities. Residents are watched by guards, most of whom do not even have guns. Moreover, there are also no reliable high fences. The other prisoners weren't too happy about the transfer of a dangerous killer. Moreover, the head of the institution himself was against this decision. However, he could not influence who was transferred to them. The outrage was so strong that the authorities had to reconsider their decision a little over a month later. They agreed to return the girl to the maximum security prison where she is today. As for Michael, he tried to challenge his conviction, but he failed. In 2020, once something interesting happened, his relatives accused the man of driving his own mother to death. According to them, Michael regularly asked her for money to make purchases from other inmates. He told her that he could be killed if she did not get the money, and the woman had spent several years transferring money to people on the outside who had been associated with those prisoners. In the end, the woman spent about $30,000, barely making ends meet. She was nervous all the time until she had a heart attack. She died at the age of 60, and now all of her relatives blame Michael. The man was transferred to a lighter regime prison, which caused further resentment among both family members and the Tory family. The victim's brother said in an interview that after losing his sister, his life was meaningless and he was left all alone in the world. Despite the 14 years that have passed since then, it is still unable to recover from this tragedy. Share your opinion in the comments and do not forget to like under this clip if you liked it. Thank you for watching.